square-foot building shelters more than $2 million worth of stock, ranging from toys to jewellery and gifts for retailers only. It's one of the biggest in Australia and features all that's new in toys for 86, including these Cabbage Patch twins, set to fill the shelves and empty the purses. A new line of toys made by a group of Newcastle intellectually handicapped people under the Timby Toy brand are also in stock. This cute item is a nominee for Toy of the Year at the big Toy World Fair in Sydney planned for March.
The Woodbury Neighbourhood Centre will be the home of the new SITH, and it was here that a free lunch was provided for the young people of the suburb, as well as nearby Taro and Beresfield. The Maitland SITH is extending its activities to Woodbury and was using the lunch to gather ideas from young people about just what activities they'd like to take part in. The area has at least 300 unemployed young people between the ages of 15 and 25, who, according to Maitland SITH, need its services.
The main needs are there's no entry into jobs, into the mainstream of society for them, and of course this doesn't leave them with much self-worth. So I guess our courses are designed to help them feel good about themselves and motivate them back into achieving employment.
Further help for the unemployed can now be found in Mayfield, where a new Commonwealth Employment Service office has just been opened on Maitland Road. This spacious new office was set up to relieve part of the workload on Newcastle CES. The 11 staff at Mayfield will be working closely with industries nearby to find jobs for those on its books, leaving Newcastle to concentrate on the central business district. The office will cover the area as far north as Karua and Hawke's Nest, serving around 3,500 people every quarter.
It was a council meeting without the presence of Councillor Crichton, who had resigned over the topic set for discussion. Progress so far on the multi-million-dollar Salamander commercial development project. 40 lots have already been sold on the site, and contracts will soon be finalised on the Tony Roach Resort and the private hospital. It's hoped that the commercial development will be completed by September this year. And as far as Shire President Roy Taylor is concerned, things are running smoothly.
It's going quite well at the present stage because the development application has been approved, the building application has been taken out and has been taken up by Salamander Projects, so really there's nothing now other than wait for Salamander Projects to commence work on the site.
And when will construction begin?
We think in about a fortnight's time. That's about the timescale aimed at by Salamander Projects.
It was an excited crowd who gathered for the annual meeting of the Dungog and District Nursing Home Committee, and they had every reason to be. 5 years of fundraising and planning for the nursing home came closer to reality with this announcement by Tom Geeson, representing Frank Whiddon Masonic Homes.
After all our study, we have decided at the Frank Whiddon Masonic Homes, the full council, to make a donation to this project of up to the value of $100,000.
The Sydney charity organisation is based in Glenfield under the chairmanship of Mr Whiddon. With the help of government funding to the tune of $500,000, the residents in the Dungog Shire have had to raise the balance amount. According to Chairman of the committee Ray Nielsen, the generous donation will enable plans to begin sooner than expected on the $1 million project.
It'll be tremendous to think that the Masonic Homes have joined with us in this project and they're going to give us $100,000.
As it stands now, how are plans for the progress of the nursing home?
Well, they're up to the stage we've interviewed architects and within 3 weeks to a month we'll be appointing architects to design and supervise the construction of our job.
But Councillor Hollier says there's no way he'll resign over the pool dispute. He's been lobbied by senior citizens and accident victims, calling for a 25-metre heated pool instead of a 50-metre pool. And he claims this will be the best alternative for the bay.
And I believe that by building a 25-metre heated pool, we have an option which is going to be available to the whole of the community all of the year.
The swimming committee says, though, that the swimming clubs, the schools and quite a few people who regularly use the current pool want a 50-metre pool. Now, why can't you give them what they want?
Look, I agree. They want a 50-metre pool, and that's been made very clear to myself and to other councillors. There is a slight difference between what we want and what we can afford and what we really need.
The present ocean baths will be demolished in the near future to make way for the Public Works Department's marina development. According to pool committee members, the PWD has indicated it will compensate for the loss to the tune of $200,000. But they say unless the council makes a decision soon, that money may be diverted to other projects. Spokesman for the committee, which has already raised $100,000 for the new pool, Rob Sands, says all schools in the area, as well as other swimmers using the ocean baths, want a replacement 50-metre pool.
The dollars and cents add up, firstly in capital construction. It's cheaper to build a 50-metre pool. Others will argue differently and they'll use excuses to say that that's not right. The running costs, when you consider the small population and to keep a pool open from 10 in the morning until 8 or 9 at night will require a greater staff, a lot more cost and very few patrons.
Now a constituted organisation, the Lower Hunter Rugby League, with its 26 member clubs, met at the Hexham Bowling Club last night. The meeting was chaired by club president Jim Houston, and after the official business, discussion centred on the recent Newcastle Rugby League offer of reconciliation talks, a matter which is supported by the newly formed Lower Hunter Division, but on their terms.
We want to go to a meeting or a conference with the Newcastle Rugby League to discuss the future of rugby league within Newcastle. This dispute's been going on too long. It's been going on since October 1985, and we are going there to meet them as representatives of the Lower Hunter Rugby League, not as representatives of the former Second Division Rugby League Association.
Do you think this dispute can be solved?
I do. There's got to be a few changes, but I think that we can get down and talk about it, and if the Newcastle Rugby League decide to affiliate both us and the Referees Association, I mean the Lower Hunter Referees Association, yes, I feel that it can be solved.
If no resolution to the conflict can be solved, the Newcastle Rugby League will place bans on the Lower Hunter players, referees and officials, disqualifying them from affiliation with any other club. However, Mr Houston does not see these threats as serious.
Well, the Newcastle Rugby League can put a ban on a person. The only ban that will come out of that is the fact that if a player or official wants to rejoin a district club, and then they can refuse his registration and place a ban on a player like that. But I'm quite sure that in the future, if an outstanding prospect comes to light in the Lower Hunter competition and a district club sees that he is a real good player, I feel that the ban will be lifted within 24 hours.
The family doctor has long been the dispenser of healthcare to Novocastrians, but all that is due to change. From next month they'll have an alternative to the GP and the hospital clinic, and it'll be happening here in the old Dawson's Hardware building, 802 Hunter Street, where a Sydney-based company, Nagala Holdings, will be opening an Edelston-type medical practice. Outfitting of these premises will commence shortly for an opening within the next 5 weeks. The clinic will offer a 24-hour service from a practitioner, a pathology service, a paediatrician, a stop smoking clinic and a nutritionist for weight control. It'll be shopfront medicine. People will be able to walk off the street for their healthcare needs at their convenience. According to a number of doctors I've spoken to, the concept itself is very good. There are a few drawbacks, however. There's no continuity of care, no special relationship with any one doctor. Despite this, local doctors are generally fairly happy. According to the president of the Hunter Medical Association, Dr. Ian Walker, the introduction
so
of
you
the
don't see
24-hour clinic
shopfront medicine
could be just the tonic
assuming
local
enormous
practitioners
proportions
need.
then in the future.
We don't regard it as a threat. We regard it as a stimulus that may bring our attention to some of the things that we don't do quite as well as maybe we should, but we regard any kind of competition or change as something to be examined, considered and reacted to if necessary.
Meanwhile, NIB Health Funds has joined the entrepreneurial spirit of health in the 1980s by opening its own eye care centre in Hunter Street. It opened last week, offering eye care services, including lenses and spectacles, which manager Cole Rogers says has been made possible by changes in the Medicare legislation of 1985. He says the eye care centre is but an example of what healthcare fund groups can now offer the public and says it's a sign of things to come.
Well, we don't view it as entrepreneurial medicine so much as just a quality service that we're providing, and it's very keenly priced. The spectacles and the lenses that are provided are very keenly priced.
If this is a success, would you consider other ventures?
Yes, we're always interested to expand the range of services we can provide to our members, and in this case, of course, it's open to the public generally as well.
With these new developments in healthcare and the arrival of an entrepreneurial element, does that then mean that advertising by doctors will necessarily follow what is becoming a clearly more commercial venture?
The profession would prefer that its reputation is spread by word of mouth and by patient experience. If advertising becomes a necessary part of medicine in the next 20 years, I suppose we'll have to change, but I can't see that there's going to be a sudden change in the advertising pattern of medical practitioners.
Mrs Crozio has already established some priorities, even though she's been in the job as local government minister for little more than a day. She wants to revamp the Local Government Act and give councils clear-cut guidelines of what the government expects of them. And Mrs Crozio also wants an elected council back in Newcastle.
I'd like to be honest with you and say tomorrow, but you realise, of course, that's not possible. I have called for a full report as to what level the administrator's at in implementing the financial reports of that table document. I want to examine all issues, whether it is the amendments to the Newcastle Act itself or whether it is the composition of the overall council. But one thing I'm sincere on, Newcastle will be given their council as soon as practical.
After the council was sacked in October 1984, a local government inspector's report recommended that Town Clerk Barry Lewis be replaced. So will Mrs Crozio adhere to that recommendation?
Well, it's again going to depend on Mr Saunders reporting to me. As you realise, I've only been in this position now 24 hours. I can only assess on reports that I have before me. I want to see what has been happening since Mr Saunders has been there, and I certainly want to consult with Mr Saunders. At this stage, Mr Lewis is a professional officer. I know the reports had to be tabled in the House, and there were some quite damaging statements in them, but that is not up to me at this stage to judge until I have seen what steps have been taken to overcome those anomalies.
The Minister says she hasn't received any submission from the City Administrator, Cole Saunders, for the expansion of the Newcastle City Council boundaries, and until she does, it won't be considered.
23, C49.
It seemed that the media were to be left in the dark on all plans of Lindy Chamberlains' return trip home. Outside the Chamberlains' residence at Avondale College in Coorambong, the media sat patiently waiting, Some crews had been there for the past 2 days. The local feeling about Lindy's release from Berrima Prison in Darwin was one of outstretched arms, eager for her return to help in what they describe as a fight for justice. Night fell and reports of Lindy's arrival at 9:45 from Brisbane to Sydney's Mascot Airport were confirmed. It was then thought that the Chamberlains would make their journey to Cooranbong by a chartered flight or by road. At around 11 o'clock, cars acting as planned decoys flowed through the entrance gates of the college. But it wasn't until 12:20 a.m. that a Ford panel van escorted a silver BMW in a hastened arrival. After more than 3.5 years, Lindy Chamberlain was finally home.
Can you confirm that is Mrs. Chamberlain that's arrived for us, please?
Mrs. Chamberlain has arrived.
That's her husband with her?
I cannot answer that, I don't know.
We don't know, but Mrs. Chamberlain has arrived.
Please leave.
For the Chamberlains, the return of Lindy back home is the first step in a lengthy inquiry, which seems the only hope now of proving Lindy's innocence in the murder charge of her daughter Azaria. But one thing is for certain, despite the outcome over these next few months, the Northern Territory government has granted Lindy Chamberlain her freedom. She's been reunited with her family and will not be returned to custody.
Under our legal system, the opening of court sittings such as these are taken very, very seriously. The Church and the legal system come together in the traditional ecumenical service, such as one which is underway behind me now in the Christchurch Cathedral.
The service was attended by the presiding judge, the Honourable Mr. Justice Clark, fellow members of the bench and legal profession, police, local politicians, school children, family and friends. It's aimed at reinforcing the credibility of the law through religion. At the conclusion of the service, the official party made their way to police escorts for a 200-metre journey down the road to the courthouse. It was then inside to Number 1 Court for the formal opening of the Supreme Court sittings, at which the public was also welcome, but not counters. The presiding judge's address is always traditionally significant.
The presiding judge, the Honourable Mr. Justice Clark's comments centred mainly on a history lesson of circuit courts. Circuit courts began here in Newcastle in the early 1900s, bringing what he called justice to every man's door. In other words, bringing top legal representation out of the main metropolitan area of Sydney. The Honourable Mr. Justice Clark also made brief mention of media criticism of the judicial system. But he said that basically at the end of the day, it was the most open and fair system anywhere in the world.
The Hunter Valley Training Company has entered a new era. Having saved the careers of hundreds of youngsters over the last 5 years, it's now permanently providing a pool of metalworking apprentices to industry under the terms of a unique award. And today, the state's Senior Conciliation Commissioner, Mr. Wells, inspected and approved of the scheme.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
It didn't take long for the Boasted's forecasts of a Manly win may seem to be against popular opinion. Their opponents, Parramatta, have won the Cessnock Challenge Cup the last 2 years and also defeated Manly last weekend 24-20 at Tweed Heads. Nevertheless, Boasted, who's played for Australia 26 times, believes the Sea Eagles will get up this weekend. And he says that pre-season games such as this one are not just half-hearted.
Well, you can't really afford to be half-hearted because there's a lot of inter-club competition and intra-club competition. So, you know, if we lose against Parramatta this weekend and then we've got to go into a competition against them, you know, in 3 or 4 weeks' time, they'll obviously have the psychological edge against us. So it's probably our best interest to get out there and do our best and to also cement a place in first grade.
So these pre-season matches are fairly important?
Oh, yes, very important. It's very hard. You can't just go into the competition without having any match experience, and that's their basic formula is for that. But we've also got untried players that we've got to see what their form's like and where they should start too.